Welcome everyone to the latest coffee break webinar by RIB CostX. My name is Francesca Nottingham and I am a CostX consultant in RIB software. As you can see on screen, this month's topic is exploring measured dimensions, so we'll have a look at how you would use this functionality in the software. For those of you who don't know what CostX is, or for those who have never used it, CostX is a fully integrated measuring and estimating solution with universal applications, supporting everything from hand-drawn sketches to PDFs, DWGs, all the way through to 3D models, BIM files, and everything in between. As we can see from this matrix, RIB CostX is available in a variety of licenses, ranging from offering all functionality to a fairly limited option depending on your estimating requirements. Delving deeper into each functionality, let's look at the components, breaking down how each of them are cohesive with one another, bringing you an all-in-one service. You have your takeoff options to start with. Whether you're using 3D BIM or 2D drawings, CostX provides accurate data enabling you to utilise this data within your workbook. So our workbooks are just like Excel spreadsheets, but they are our own version. They still have the ability to use formulas and functions, making them very easy to use and navigate. We then have revisions tracking. Now this offers an accurate method of comparing a previous revision with a new one, giving you multiple ways to highlight, identify and quantify any changes, meaning you're always up to date with the latest cost implications. Once you've completed your estimate, you then have the opportunity to produce a report. Now we offer various standard report templates for you to use. Alternatively, you can customise your own report using a professional quality output. Don't forget to check out the RIB CostX YouTube channel, where we upload our coffee break webinars, and you can also subscribe so you get notified of the latest videos and kept up to date with the newest features and how-to videos. So this month's webinar, as previously mentioned, we'll be reviewing the functionality of measured dimensions used within the dimension view within CostX. Firstly, let's discuss what measured dimensions are. So they allow the ability to tell CostX exactly what you want calculated for your measure. When can we use them? So we use these in our dimension groups. There are some standard default fields, but we can add custom quantities as well, allowing you to completely customise your measure to your unique project. Topics we'll be exploring in this webinar are adding a new dimension group, editing an existing dimension group, custom quantities, management of standard dimension groups, example of standard dimension group, and tech web downloads. So let's start exploring measured dimensions. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is how to add a dimension group. So firstly, let's take a look at what we're looking at here. We've got a couple of drawings that I've loaded in. We've got no dimension groups yet. I'm currently in my ground floor plan, that's why it's showing over here. But generally everything is pretty basic. So I've started off creating a project, I've created a building within that project, and this is how I've got to work. So what I'm going to do first is add a dimension group. We're just going to add a very simple one, just to get the ground floor area of this building here. So if I go to my dimensions tab, I simply just press add. There's two halves to this button. There's the top half, which would just add a dimension group, or there's the drop down menu. And here you've got the option to add a dimension group, or you can actually import dimension groups from CSV. So if you've got an entire list of dimension groups that you use to wish, but you've got them in CSV format, you can use this to import it, and just saves you doing it within the system. But what I'm going to show you now is actually how to do it within the system. So we'll select add dimension group. Okay, and this is going to be super simple. We're literally just going to call it GFA. We'll just keep it as standard, but we'll give it a number. Okay, the measurement type is going to be area, so I'll leave that all the same. Okay, so I've just got a bog standard GFA dimension group, and I'm just going to do a random colour selector here. We'll go for this colour and then just press insert. So as you can see, I've now got my folder, so 01 standard, and then my ground floor area dimension group sitting within that folder. So currently I haven't measured anything yet because we've obviously only just created this. So we're just literally going to go around and do a quick measure of the total ground floor area of this drawing. Okay, so that was a pretty rough example, but you get the idea. I've now just created a quantity to sit within my ground floor area dimension group. So if I hover over this, we can see that I've got a count of 1, so it's 1 area. I've got a length, so it's worked out my perimeter length, and I've also got the area, so 1,752 square meters. Okay, so although I created that in a area dimension group, what I can actually do is alter the display of which quantity I want to be displayed. So I just double click on my dimension group to open up my properties again, and you can see I've got a default display option here. So if I wanted to know the perimeter length, then I could just select that from my drop down list, press update, and you can see it's now giving me the length rather than the area. We do have little symbols on our dimension groups as well. So length is a little ruler here. If I change that back to area, it will update to a little grid, and then we have different other options. So if it's volume, then it will be a grid that's a cube, and if it's a count, then it will be a hash instead, but we'll go through that a bit later on in the demonstration. So that is as simple as adding a dimension group. If you want to edit a dimension group, then you just literally do what I just did. So either double click on the dimension group here, or you can select properties up here and you can go in and edit anything you need to. The only thing you cannot edit once it's been created is the measurement type. So you can see here it's been grayed out, and that means I cannot edit it. Let's create a slightly more complex dimension group just to see how you would go about doing that. So if we wanted to measure the interior walls, for example, but we're obviously only on a 2D drawing, we can still get a 3D measurement, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to select the top half of this button here, so I'm going to add a new dimension group. And this time we're just going to call this one interior walls. Okay, so I actually want my measurement type to be length, because obviously I want the length of the wall. I'm going to keep it in my standard folder there. But what I need to do now is tell CostX the default height. So my height is going to be 2.6 meters. What I can show you now is measured dimension. So I'm going to click on this tab here and basically show you how we can add new or specify different formulas for CostX to work out figures for us. So we've got a couple of options. We've got a name, so you can give your dimensions, so each dimension a name. You've got a multiplier, you've got count, so it's automatically going to give me the count, so that's the property that's default to be put in that place. We've also got length, which is the same, it's default to be put in there. And then you can see I've also got these grayed out, so these are my width, height and offset. So if I wanted to alter these, I could untick use default. So if my height changed, for example, I can then enter that information there, but I'm just going to say use default. And now we've got some options. So we've got area, wall area, volume and weight. Obviously this is an interior wall, so weight is obsolete here, but with area, we're basically telling CostX to measure the length and times it by the width. For wall area, we're telling CostX to measure the length and times it by the height. And for volume, we're telling CostX to measure the area times the height. So because I've entered the height information and it knows to calculate the length, my wall area is going to be automatically calculated for me. So if I press insert, I've got my new interior walls dimension group in my standard folder, and if I go to start measuring, so let's change to line mode to make this a bit easier, and then if I just start measuring my interior walls, so just clicking on each of them, okay, so I've measured a couple of walls there, you get the idea. Now if I hover over my dimension group, you can see I've got my default height of 2.6, I've got my count, so I've got 15 walls, I've got my perimeter length, 161 meters, and then I've also got my wall area, so 418 meters squared. So that is CostX calculating that item for me because we told it to do so in the dimension group. So when you're using these quantities, although you've only measured the length of each side of the room, you've actually got your wall area. So if you needed to do your costs for plasterboard or painting, for example, then you could use that quantity there from your wall area, as well as you could use your length area for items like skirting or coving, or whatever you need to. So the beauty of measured dimensions is just basically collecting all the information you need to complete your cost estimate. So you're not limited to just one measure type, you've got multiple quantities that you can draw from. So what we can also do is use custom quantities. So if I now switch to my structure drawing, you can see it's the same building, but now I've got a structural drawing. And what we're going to do is measure the pile caps. So I'm going to create a new dimension group again. This time I'm going to call it 2 pile 800 by 1800 by 900. Specify the mil. Okay, and then in my folder it's going to be 02 substructure, and then backslash to create a new subfolder, and then pile caps. Okay, for my measurement type, I need to set this as count because I want to count the amount of piles or pile caps. I then want my default display to be count as well. I now need to set my default height. So this needs to be 0.9 as per our dimension up here. We're going to change our positive dimension shape to a cross. And we're going to select a different colour. So let's just use the random colour selector. That green will do. Okay, so once you've finished up here, what we're going to do is use our custom quantities. So we're going to go to the next tab here, so the second tab in, and we're going to insert a custom quantity. So I'm just going to click insert here, and then I'm literally going to call this working space. Okay, and my unit of measure is going to be meters cubed, which I can choose from the menu. Okay, now when I go into my measured dimensions tab, you can see I've now got a new field here called working space. So that's the custom quantity that I've just created. Okay, so now we need to tell CostX exactly what we want to calculate from our measure. So within the length field, I'm going to overtype the default expression, and I'm going to put 2 times 0.8 plus 1.8. Okay, so that's to calculate the excavation perimeter for the pile cap. So in the area field, I'm going to type in 0.8 times 1.8. So this is to calculate the flat area of the pile cap. Okay, so now we need to go into the volume field. So what we can do here, we could enter in our expression in here, but it's actually easier if you go to this ellipsis button. So I'm just going to click on this. And now we've got a whole host of items that we can add to our formulas. So here we need to calculate the area times the height. So I'm just going to double click area here. So that now appears in my expression editor, and then I'm going to press times and then find height. So double click on height, and now that's completed my volume quantity for the pile cap. Okay, so we'll close this, and you can see that's now got the information in there. My working space is going to be my length times by height times by a half. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go into my expression editor, and I'm going to select length this time, times by height, times a half. Okay, so then you want to close this, and then we can insert our new dimension group. So as you can see, because it's a count, it's got a little hashtag symbol here, and we've got the name, so 2 pile, and then the dimensions of that pile. and you can see that's my little symbol or legend for when I'm doing my quantities. So let's go around and start to do our measure. So the pile caps are in the middle here. So I'm going to change to point mode, and I'm literally just going to plonk a point in each one. Okay, so once you've done that, we can see we've got 30 numbers, so we've got 30 pile caps, but when we hover over, we can see that we've got a length of 156 meters, we've got an area, we've got a volume, and we've also got a working space as well. So by adding in that custom quantity, we were able to tell CostX we want that little bit more information for those pile caps. And if you hover over each one individually, it'll give you its individual dimensions. Now, if you wanted to have even more information, I can give you an example of a standard dimension group that we have that's got the ability to calculate the number of timber studs you need for your interior walls. So let's go back to our ground floor plan. We're going to delete the interior walls dimension group that we created earlier. So I'm just going to right click and delete this dimension group. Okay, so those measures have disappeared. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a dimension group from my standard dimensions. So if I go to my system administration and just give you an example of what these are. So we'll go to standard dimension groups, and you can see I've got a whole catalogue of items here that I can refer to. So I've got my standard dimension groups here, and these are ones that I've used in previous projects or previous buildings that I can continue to use throughout other projects and buildings. Okay, so one I just mentioned earlier is my timber studs. So I've got 50 by 100 mil MSG 8 dry studs. So if I just edit this, for example, we can see the information we've got. So we've got the name, we've got the folder, we've got the measurement type, and we've got the default display. Now, if I go to my custom quantities, you can see I've got loads here. So I've got my number one, which is number of studs. So it's going to tell me the number of studs that I need to buy. Number two is cut length. So I've got that in meters. So that's going to tell me the cut length of my studs. And then I've got a series of different lengths here. Now, these are all lengths or standard lengths that you can buy or procure for your project. And then I've also got oversized, so anything over 6 meters. Okay, so if I go to my measured dimensions tab, let's try and make this a bit bigger so you can see. So in my name, I've got this formula here. Looks pretty complicated, but it actually allows you to identify the measure when you've done the quantity. You can go to your dimensions tab and you can identify which item is which. We've also got the count, which is the property we'd expect, same in the length. We've got height, which is a variable, so it's top level and base level, or minus base level. We've got the offset, which is base level. We've got the wall area. And then we've got all of our custom quantities. So we've got number of studs, so we're telling it to work out the number of studs we need per 1 meter in length. We've also got the cut length, so the number of studs times the height. And then we've got formulas in here. Now these might look complicated, but they're not. They're basically just working it out for you, and you just insert these. If I click on one of these, you just insert these using our functions. So we've got a functions tab here, and you can just use whichever one you want to. Same principles, you just double click whatever you need and it appears in your expression editor. And then once you are happy with this, then come out of here, and you can manage these all within your system administration. So you can insert a new one, you can edit an existing one, and you can copy one and delete one. You can import them. So like I said earlier, we've got standard dimension groups from CSV. You can also import them from our tech web. I'll go into that in a minute. You can also export them as well. So the way you get these into your project is if I go to my dimensions tab and select add, I can then go to my drop down menu and select the one I want. So let's go to my studs, for example. And then if this message pops up, you just want to click yes. Then it will populate the folder for you. So you've got a carpentry folder and structural timbers. You've got the measurement types, you've got the default display, and then all of the custom quantities and your measured dimensions are automatically populated for you. You haven't had to go in and do that yourself each time. So you just press insert. So I've got my new structural timbers here, and what I can do is do my measure once again. So let's measure our internal walls. Okay, so now when I hover over these, you can see here that I've got a count of 1, so it's one measure. I've got a length, so a perimeter length of 40 meters. I've got a height of 2.4. I've got a wall area because it's calculated the length times the height. But I've also got number of studs, so it's telling me I've got 68 number of studs. I've got a cut length of 163, and it's telling me that they should be bought in 2.4 meter lengths. So because I did that, I've now got a whole host of information to help me out with procurement and to help me out with a number of different quantities. Now, the name I spoke about earlier is suitable for the dimensions tab. So if I just open this up, make the name bigger. Okay, so you can see that it's adjusted the name. It knows that each of them need to be 2.4 length. Okay, so it's done it all for you. Now, when you have created your standard dimension groups, the way to bring them into a building that you're working on is if I come at this, so press File and Close. Okay, and double click to create a new building. You would have your building properties, so you type in the name, assign it to a project, and then you've also got this tab here, so standard dimension groups. Now this list is every single thing that I've got in my standard dimension groups host that I showed you in my system admin. So if I open these, you can hand select all of them. You can right click and select all to bring them all in. It's up to you. So each time you start a new building or a new project, you don't have to create them each time. They will just automatically be brought in for you. Okay, so that is exploring measured dimensions. So there is a whole list of functions that you can use in your custom quantities. If you go into your properties of your dimension group, then feel free to just have a look and go in and see what functions and properties are available to you. It will give you a description of what that item does, so if you're not sure, then it will give you a hint as to how to use that function. Now, something I mentioned earlier was our TechWeb website. So if I bring that across and show you what that looks like. So to access this, you just need to have your serial number. You don't need a password, and you just go to samples and templates. And right at the top here, we've got sample dimension groups. So if I filter this item, so dimension groups, you've got a different list here, depending on what region you're in, of sample dimension groups to download. So they're free to download. You just click on download and then import them into your system, and then they're there for you to use. That concludes this coffee break webinar. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in next month for the next in the series of our coffee break webinars. Give this video a like and feel free to subscribe so you keep up to date with the latest how-to videos.